Good morning, everybody. Here is New York. Uh, um, we are here together today. Dr. Martinez is the director of the program here, the behavioral program, and I am myself a psychotherapist. We have been, our objective was to the floating hospital is having several clinics throughout New York City. Two are more precisely in Queens. The main clinic is in Queens, and we have a satellite clinic in Queensbridge. Queensbridge is the biggest.
It's the largest public housing. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Martinez. So as Mr. Moretto was saying, one of our satellite sites is within Queensbridge Housing, which is the largest housing project in the country. It's over 90 buildings. I don't remember how many units, but you can imagine how large it is. And recently, New York City passed a law stating that any resident of public housing who is caught smoking on the premises is now at risk for not being able to renew their lease with the Public Housing Authority. So as part of that, we linked up with the American Cancer Society to try to see if we can offer services for residents in that community to try to begin to address managing their smoking use. So Mr. Moretto has taken the lead in providing those services to residents in the community. And so we started off with the goal of trying to improve the smoking cessation, or we prefer to actually call it smoking management, for community smokers. So again, we started off offering those services to Queensbridge Housing community residents. And our initial model, the way we imagined it, was to offer a group on smoking cessation and smoking management. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Moretto so he can talk about sort of the structure of the group and how it was intended to play out, and then what actually happened when we tried to implement it.
Yes, alors, clearly the philosophy behind the group intervention was a harm reduction philosophy. We implement the group this way because we have an experience in drug treatment program, and we know that the more we work on immediately abstinence, the more we increase the desire for the product. Therefore, it was our way to implement this service. The group was structured like as a process group, meaning that each session will follow its own story, its own process, and when the group will start, it will be very hard for newcomers to join the group. The first step was clearly the first session with the members was to present what is cigarettes, what is the industry, what is happening when we are smoking, what do we experience, what are the consequences of smoking cigarettes, and very rapidly we will go on measuring dependence using tests, and on defining where the members were staying, what were their level of smoking, and what was their objective with smoking. It was very clear for us that we wanted to go slowly and also to stay where the members were, to help them move toward their objectives.
So one of the benefits of this process group was, as Mr. Moretto was saying, each group was intended to build upon what was discussed in the previous session. So with this initial sort of assessment and information, sort of psychoeducation, part of it was also creating that safe space where every individual could speak about where they fell in the continuum of use, and then over time to develop their own objective and their own target, as opposed to us telling them, okay, well, you need to quit and you need to stop, and throwing a bunch of interventions at them of how to stop. So it's important to keep that in mind, that was part of the process.
Then the second part of this process, the second session, was to do, in fact, to use a problem-solving approach, which consists in for each member to define what is the problem, what is the problem they have with smoking, which can be a different kind of problem with family, with themselves, with their health, with the world around, with the regulation in New York City. That's something that never happened, that was never mentioned. Mostly it was about health issues and the cost of smoking cigarettes. And starting from what is the problem, we'll define what is the objective, what are the exceptions, meaning what they experience in their life. Did they have exceptions in their life? Did they stop smoking, or did they reduce smoking spontaneously, or did they do something in the past that was working? Now, define what they have done with smoking until now in order to reduce or to stop, and so on. After that, we will discuss why people generally are smoking. What are the benefits and the cause of smoking? Generally, there is the main cause is pleasure. Then there is also managing emotion. It can be social, doing like others, the entrance door. Managing emotion like pain, like depression, stress, anxiety, and after that we will define the objective. In the following session with the group members, we will address each of those emotions in a way that the members have tools to help them alleviate those emotions and regulate those emotions. It will be the aim of giving those tools and to work on those emotions was always towards their smoking objective, with the objective with smoking.
The way we envisioned this program working was to have ideally about 8 participants who would be able to commit to an 8-session process. The idea was to be able to meet once a week for 8 weeks consecutively in order to go through the process that Mr. Moretto just described. So that was the ideal. The reality was different than that. So I said, I should also note that prior to beginning the group, the Floating Hospital held a community event within Queensbridge Housing. They have a community space. And so we held an event at the community space just to raise awareness about the group, to gauge community interest, to get information from those who participated in the community event of when they would be available. And so we took all those things into consideration when we set the parameters for the group, meaning when we chose the date and the time for when the group was to begin. So we were very optimistic in terms of who would come to the group and their ability to stick with it, because all of that had been already explained and people had signed up for it. So then when we began to implement the group, of course, the ideal and the reality are never the same. So Mr. Moretto can speak about kind of what happened when we started the group.
In fact, what happened very rapidly is that the first group, many prospective members were scheduled to attend the group, and in fact only 2 members came to that first group. The following group session, 2 more members came, and we were able to, at the end, to follow for the 8th session. In fact, only 2 members came on a regular basis out of 4 members who came to that group, which was very different what was expected, and also was very different from the feedback we had from the community and from the people that wanted to attend the group. Then I was very disappointed. In terms of results, the two members that attend the group, we went through the entire process, meaning that we worked on the problem solving, address the emotions, the sensation, the perception associated with smoking, and both of them reached their objective. One wanted to quit smoking one or 2 weeks before joining the group and wanted to maintain abstinence, and this person was able. The other member wanted to reduce from 20 cigarettes a day to 6 or 7 and was able to maintain that objective and reach that objective, which was very successful. The disappointment we had, it was about the number of members who attend the group, which we understood later why it was like that, because for several logistic reasons, having a group is set in time and place. We didn't have a group room in Queensbridge in the community, and therefore we had to use another group room in the main clinic, which logistically was not very easy for the members.
Even though we did offer transportation at no cost to the community members, meaning we would pick them up in the community, bring them to our main site. But initially, when we had planned to do the group, we were going to have it in the Queensbridge community itself. Then because of some logistics, we weren't able to host the group there. So that, we believe that contributed to some of the folks not actually following through. I should also add that we were offering incentives for every group that community members attended. And even so, despite offering free rides, despite offering incentives per session, we still had pretty low turnout.
Okay. Then our analysis of what happens also, we think that members coming from a community, everybody knows each other, they're living in the same place, and they may have had a problem with confidentiality, and it may have been difficult for them. Also, not everybody is available to come every week at the same time, the same place. And now we are willing to change our approach, maybe not in regards of a processed intervention and an harm reduction intervention, but rather being more flexible, offering smoking cessation individual session. That's where we aim right now.
Right. So basically, just to sort of summarize, then our takeaway from this was that the intervention itself had, you know, a high success rate in terms of the folks who were able to complete it, but it seems like the group model itself and the location of where it was held, we believe contributed to the low turnout rate. So in order to address that, what we're thinking about doing moving forward is to have individual sessions as opposed to a group model, and then having it within our clinic that's in the Queensbridge Housing proper. And hopefully by doing that, then being able to engage more folks to complete the process.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Dr. Martinez. Thanks, Mr. Moretto. Just want to give everyone a heads up. We've got about 5 minutes left on this. So let me ask the faculty questions for Mr. Moretto and Dr. Martinez.
This is Bob Burns with the National Center for Health and Public Housing. And I guess the first question I'd ask is whether or not you guys have had a chance to reach back to the initial registrants to ask them why they didn't show up. And then second, my next question actually was going to be whether or not you had considered integrating some kind of individualized counseling into the process, because it's been shown to provide some great results as well. But I'm just curious if you were able to get some feedback from the folks as to why they weren't showing up.
That's an excellent question. In fact, we, our team here at the Floating Hospital, we recently had a meeting to sort of debrief and plan for the next iteration of it. And that was exactly one of the first takeaways from our meeting, is to designate who was going to go back to that original registration, or people who expressed interest, and to reach out to them again, find out why they didn't come, and see if they'd be willing then to come with this new model that we're hoping to implement. In terms of offering ongoing therapy or support services, we do have a behavioral health department. And so all of these folks who come across, if they engage with smoking cessation or smoking management with us, we do have the ability to also offer individual supportive therapy, and also, you know, medication management if they have any other psychiatric issues.
And one other question, I'm just curious. I mean, you know, based on the results, I wonder if you took another shot at the folks at Queensbridge regarding the logistics, if they could help you out in your next go around with a facility on site, because it generally does get you a better result, especially with folks who are used to kind of a traditional public housing situation.
That's an excellent suggestion. We had kind of gone back and forth with that one. Partly is because another very common experience for most of the residents there at Queensbridge is a high rate of exposure to gun violence and community violence. So there's a high comorbidity with experiencing an exposure to trauma. And so because of that, a lot of folks inherently have a difficult time trusting others and don't necessarily feel comfortable in a group setting. So one of the things, although we didn't reach back to the original registrants, we did happen to, I asked the other clinicians that we have as part of our team to speak with their patients that they see for ongoing treatment. And a lot of the feedback that we got was exactly that, is that the group model didn't necessarily fit with their sense of need for privacy and for emotional safety. So we, you know, which is why we then decided to move forward with the individual model. But moving forward, I mean, it's not something that's necessarily off the table. We could either go back to the community and see if they can offer us a space again, or we are looking to relocate our current main site, which would be literally across the street from the housing project. So we do have the potential of being able to offer groups again closer to the community in the future.
Great.
Great. Other questions or recommendations from the faculty?
This is Frank. Let's see. Lots of thoughts here. So like Cliff, I've been doing this for 3 decades, and I've literally run hundreds of groups. I think that I'm going to give you a whole different perspective on this. I don't think you need to be more flexible. I think you need to be more rigid, in the sense that you have 2 completely different kinds of people in this group. People who are just thinking about quitting are very different than people who want to quit. So I would first recommend that you really do some vetting, and you really get people in the groups that are the quitting groups who literally agree to that fact, that they say, I'm ready to do this. I'm going to quit on this specific date. And I think in constituting a group, you have to have like-minded people in it. So if you're having some people say, well, I'm just going to reduce, how are you then convincing or helping the people who say they really want to quit? Because in the back of their mind, they're saying, well, if these health professionals are letting these other people just reduce, then why should I bother to quit altogether? Why can't I just reduce? So again, I see the value of having people reduce. I'm not arguing that, but I think you're muddling it too much when you have both of those people in the same group. So that would be my first recommendation, is to really separate that. Your process here is excellent, but it, to me, is the process for an individual, because there is a lot of need for flexibility and to go in different directions with an individual. If I were going to have you do groups, or you want to do groups, I would suggest that you say, this is 8 sessions. Everybody quits on session 2. Here's a piece of paper. I want you to sign this that says, I understand this. I'm going to attend all the sessions, because if I don't, that's going to change the dynamics of the group. I agree to quit on this date, and make it much more structured for those people who want it. For those people who don't want that, then I would have this kind of getting ready to quit group, and hopefully then you could funnel those people into a group when they are ready to quit.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your feedback. I completely agree with what you just said. Personally, when doing the groups and having, at one point I had 4 members at the same time, it required from me a lot of flexibility and jumping to adapt to different objectives, and also use a lot of different kind of reframing in function of those objectives. And yes, maybe what would be possible to do is maybe screening before. I think individual will work, and screening before to know what really is the objective of each member, and maybe doing 2 groups, an abstinence group and a harm reduction group. Why not? And I think, yes, it's a very good idea. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. And I noticed somebody just said, how realistic is this with this population? Don't make the opposite assumption that it's completely unrealistic for this population. You know, I don't know. There may be a lot of people who are ready to quit. So we're not going to know that until we start to delve into it. And so, yeah, I wouldn't make the assumption that because these people have all kinds of issues that they can't quit.